So from an employee perspective, I think we're seeing it being, on primarily flat and negative across the board. We're seeing a number of organisations going through reshaping of their workforce, often resulting in downsizing. We are seeing that have an impact across the board. If you look at Hong Kong as an example of what we're seeing, recent unemployment index has gone up to 4.6%. So you've got quite a significant number of active job seekers there, around 175,000. So we're starting to see that across the board. It's happening in a number of industries and a number of sectors. Whilst originally it started to be contained in the financial services industry, that's actually spread out far more broader than that now to technology, manufacturing, property, and many others. There are very few sectors that are unaffected by the current recession and the current downturn. But organisations on the whole, the more progressive organisations are taking a very structured approach to the downsizing activities, and in terms of understanding how they respond to, I guess, some of the challenges that they're facing in the current economy. And for finance and HR departments across the board, one of the challenges they're facing is really that of uncertainty. So really limited understanding of where this is going and how long this is going to take before the markets rebound. So we're seeing a large degree of cuts across the workforce, and those tend to be going quite far and wide and quite deep into the organisations. And as a result of that, you've got some a lack of confidence in terms of businesses, but as well as an individual level, and that in itself is infecting the the status of the employment market. I guess one point to make out is, people do have a view that the market is awash with, very strong and capable talent. Well, in many cases, there is still a short supply of talent. And whilst this has been a correction, and we've seen some downturn in hiring volumes and active hiring over time, if you take this over a projected view over the next few years, I still believe there'll be a strong shortage of talent, particularly in Asia. And, if you look at top performing talent, most organisations and the more progressive organisations actually have programs in place to retain top performers. So whilst there's been a lot of focus in communication around those that are actually exiting and leaving the workforce, another thing that's been focused on is how do you actually communicate with those that are staying behind, because those are the people that you need to work effectively in their roles. Many of them have now had their job load increased, and they're covering what was 3 people is now down to 1 person, and obviously that has an impact on the morale of the organisation. So we are seeing the more progressive organisations continue to invest in training and development, and also opportunities for mobility, and really working closely with the organisation. But across all of that, communication being a key. At a monetary level and financially, we're seeing organisations, being fairly creative, rather than downsizing or losing people, looking at opportunities in particular industries where they can often offer commission only, so reductions in base salary, higher percentage commissions in order to limit the unemployment aspects of that. We're looking at organisations that are offering sabbaticals and really trying to be creative. And I think ultimately it comes back to the planning aspects, and you say those organisations that will succeed, and those organisations that will ultimately rebound quicker than their competitors when the market returns, are those that have taken a much more structured approach of looking at predicted outcomes and looking at various different scenarios and trying to model the organisation on that. And we're also seeing definitely the more progressive and particularly the international organisations consulting with specialists and consulting with outsourcing firms and HR and business consulting firms to actually look at gathering as much intelligence as possible before making some of their decisions. One of the dangers that organisations risk is by just continuing to cut around the periphery of the problem without actually sitting down and analysing the skills that are required in the organisation from a long-term perspective, and understanding what the shape of the organisation is likely to look like in several years' time. And those organisations that do that and do that well, and that's a very big challenge to do, will actually stand a much stronger competitive advantage than those others within their sector who may be taking less advantage to do that.